the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
The Brock v. Mac Legendary Rivals podcast. I'm Mike Pullman, and with us today, real pleasure. And one of the reasons that we're doing the reunion and doing all of this, Mr. Todd Nie. Welcome, Todd. How have you been?
Good. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me here. Been doing great. Yeah. Been quite a few years since playing with you guys. Can't believe how quickly time flies, but no, doing very well.
It's exciting. I think that there'll be an immense amount of interest from the team and everyone that was affiliated with the team to figure out, what life has looked like for you over the last 30 years. And we're going to dive into that. I understand that you're an educator and a principal. So, the good students of Aurelia and area have a rather imposing principal in their midst. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
Well, yeah. So I'm living in Aurelia. I was born and raised down right by Lake Erie there, and small farming community called Nanticoke. But met my wife, who was a teacher as well in Teachers College in Buffalo, and she was born and raised up here. So ended up this way and been here now for, over 25 years. Beautiful spot. Lots, the best of both seasons. You got the summer sports and the winter sports. So it's a great spot, really, really great spot to raise a family. Started out as a teacher up here, taught for 8 years, and then got the bug to, for some reason, keep going and became a principal. And I've now been in admin VP principal for almost 16 years. So great job. I mean, like everything at that level, lots of stresses, but very rewarding to see the difference you can make in kids' lives. Being 6'5" and, my size sometimes does help, I think, with parents and kids, but I just enjoy working with them and even the ones that are challenging, it's nice to see, being patient with them and taking the time. A lot of times, they're coming from difficult environments and home lives. So you're often the person that they see the most and try to, set them in some good pathways. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
It's great thinking of, it's a system that, particularly in light of the last few years where we had COVID, it must have been difficult to be in a leadership position through all of that, I would suspect.
Yeah. And I think with COVID, it was the, the unknown. It started, I remember the March break when the announcement first came, and it was, 2 weeks off just to flatten the curve. And then we were going basically month by month and switching to online, which never was an ideal, platform, but, I had good staff who really, worked hard to make it work. And for some kids, it worked great. They could, they thrive and could do the learning, but for a lot of families, a lot of kids, it was difficult, and a lot of supports to, to try to help them through it. And it was a lot. And I think I've used the analogy of, kind of like a coach and coaching a ball team, where you've got people at different ways that they respond to it. And, some you got to talk them off the ledge and help them out. Others are pretty good, but you've got to be that even keel down the middle and try to, keep it going. So, and then, yeah, we're still, I think, seeing the effects. We've got kids that had those 2 years of being away, and it's taken a bit trying to get the socialization back, the learning back, but we're getting there. And educators are, they're probably the most flexible people I know that can make it work and try to go. So, yeah, we're heading in a good direction.
It's great. Well, speaking of getting in our hot tub time machine and going back in time, why don't we dig into, life in Nanticoke? I think, there's a work ethic and an attitude, I think that um, you remind me an awful lot philosophically of Larry and Daryl Houston, who came from Pontypool, and just grounded, pretty down to earth folks, other than Larry and Daryl were fighting amongst each other. But, why don't we start there in your early roots in baseball and, just what life was like growing up in Nanticoke, which, I have some familiarity with. It's, in that kind of Simcoe, Lake Erie corridor there. Why don't we start there?
Sure. Grew up on a farm, so work ethic, grew up where you had, nightly and weekend chores. So I think it was just ingrained in me that you did these things. And summertime was always working, doing hay and stuff. So I think, it's just the nature of the beast of being out there that you did that. I started, I think, the love of baseball, following the Blue Jays. My dad would, always had on the radio at that time. You didn't have any other real way. So listening to the Jays games with him and, the teams, the World Series teams and all that, that's, I think, where the love of baseball started. We had a real good system down there. Selkirk was the local town where we played ball. I started playing t-ball. We played softball, so the windmill style pitching, and they started catching at that point. And even before that, my dad played ball as a kid. So I remember, his stories of him, growing up and things that way. So ball was always in our lives. I started coaching as I got older into high school, coached a few teams. We had in that area the ORs, which is the Ontario Rural, championship games. And I coached a team that we went all the way and won those. So, some fun experiences and great times with that. But yeah, I think, the work ethic, it comes naturally living on a farm and having to do those, those chores and things and such. So
that's amazing. And so you were playing a little bit of softball or fastball, I think is kind of the, because it's not easy to hit for sure. Right. Yeah. A pitcher, that's a really pitcher catcher dominated sport. When did you look at, playing hardball style or overhand style baseball? When did that come into the mix?
Yeah. So my first year of, at Brock, I started, doing house leagues. We played, slow pitch games there. And then back home, slow pitch was starting up. So I played in Selkirk there again. And my dad, and it was kind of neat. I actually got to play on the same team with my dad for a couple of years. But there was a family there, and their son about my age, he approached me, and they were starting a hardball team in Caledonia, which is, about 20 minutes outside Hamilton. And he knew I like ball and asked if I was interested. So started there. That'd be, that summer before going to Brock. And started playing there again as a catcher to begin, but I got to do some pitching there and, infield positions and different things. And we played, you mentioned, like Simcoe, and that was kind of the league in that area. So did that for the first couple of years. And I didn't, I was always kind of a quiet, shy kid growing up. So in high school, I didn't really play any sports. And that, one thing that I regretted. So doing this was kind of, stepping out of my comfort zone. But it gave me the confidence to know that, yeah, I can do it. I got the ability. And then that second year when I was at Brock, I saw the posters, the signups he'd had there for a hardball team there, and I think it was one of those. Okay, let's keep going with this and try and see how it goes. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. So.
That's amazing. So Todd, why don't we back the truck up a little bit? You're going to, what was behind the decision to go to Brock University? Do you recall why you chose Brock?
Yeah. So where I grew up, it's only about an hour and 20 minutes away from St. Catharines. So a lot of my friends, a lot of older friends that I knew that were graduating, and that was kind of where they were talking about heading, was the local university. So I think right from the start, I always had my mindset that that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Brock. I applied to, the 3 or 4 other that you could, but my goal was always Brock. It was getting there. So when I was accepted, and I also, always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So my original plan was, to try to do teachers college there as well. Unfortunately, the marks weren't always, where they should have been, but anyways, got there, and then, as soon as I arrived, it was great too. Saw some old high school friends that were there, and, and it was a lot smaller, it's still a fairly small school, but smaller then too. And, had a real good community feel. We did do a tour, ahead of time, and, they just, everything clicked. And for me, it was nice too, where with it being so close to home, I had, weekend jobs. I could run back and forth and bring home my laundry and pick up my groceries I needed and stuff from home. So, it was a good setup that way. So
that's great. And it certainly had a warmth to it. At that time, when you go now, the campus, and we'll talk about that because you've got reason to be on campus these days, but it had just enough space that it felt like like you could get your quiet moments where you need to study. But I think part of it was also that you would see almost everybody every day. It was kind of like a big community, and a little bit different feel than like frankly like a York or a U of T. I toured both those campuses prior to choosing Brock as well, and they just felt like they were commuter school. York felt like a commuter school where there were people driving in and kind of stuck in that, in that pattern of driving in and out of their car to go to a school, and not really much of a community surrounding it. And U of T felt huge. I remember thinking, I'm going to get lost in this ocean. So, Brock certainly didn't have that feel about it. People were, I think, all in on the university experience is maybe the best way I can phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
So exciting. You see the posters and the banners and decide to sign up at the table there.
Yeah.
And, do you remember we started without, the indoor workouts in the gym, and there were a ton of people. I think we had over 135 people that signed up. What were your early recollections of the indoor workouts? And do you remember the first coach you would have had exposure to?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, who the coaches were, that would have started out. I do remember, the pitching in that. I think it was a ballet studio that we took over for, initial warm-ups. I think the most that stands out is, the drills and things that, that they made us do. And I'm really enjoying this process, hearing the behind the scenes stuff. I had no idea it was that many people that signed up for, that first round. And, I remember the drills of, really focusing on, when you're playing catch targeting and hitting the chest, and, the stairs. That was the other kind of moment. And you're right. I've had opportunity to go back to Brock now, and the phys ed facility is amazing with the additions that they've had. But I'll still be walking down a hall and turn a corner, and there's those dreaded stairs that we had to go down however many times. But Yeah, I mean, I do. Coach McRae once he started up, I remember him very vividly, and the drills and things that he put into us, the work ethic. I think it was very maybe demanding at times, but it was good. It pushed us to get us to where we were, and yeah, it was a good start. And for me coming in, being fairly green, like I said, I had maybe just a couple of years experience going into it. Um, it was I was just there to absorb and learn from everybody, and even you guys and Ted, getting into the pitching, you were great to lead me along and help me out that way. But I do remember, so yeah, as you said, I was a catcher. Signed up as a catcher to begin. Um, Quickly realized again I was out of my element at that point. There's definitely much more experienced and people knowing a better sense of the game. But I always had a good arm growing up, and even playing back home, I loved just trying to pick the guys off, stealing second, and so I knew I had a good arm, and I could in those drills of hitting the chest, I could hit the target really well. So um, I think they saw that, but it was like, where do we put this guy and what do we do? And I remember going to see the cut list, the first one's going up, and you'd go up and there was everyone's name there and position beside, and got to my name, and I think there's about 4 or 5 positions listed beside me. Catcher, pitcher, third base, outfield. So I can just imagine I puzzled a lot of people of what do you do with this guy. But yeah, once they gave me the thought of have you thought of pitching or tried it, and I had done it a bit. Yeah, it was just a great group to continue and work with and go there.
Yeah, it is one of the few discussions I remember about the indoor workouts where it was really at first Coach Mark LePage
Right.
who really uh, centered in on your attitude, Todd. Like that was the first. It was first like Gold Star. There were a couple things in those indoor workouts that were highlighted by all the coaches. Coach McRae when he came on, but even before that, Coach LePage had noticed. Just you had this great "what can I do" attitude. I remember you used to help pick up those balls that we had to use these kind of weird hard rubber indoor practice balls, and Colin Tyler was destroying them because he kept barreling them up and knocking them silly. So, but I do remember Coach LePage coming to me and saying, Todd's just got such a great attitude. But the hard part was we had a lot of depth, unexpected depth, at a couple of positions that are typically not jammed full of people. We had tons of catchers. We had the starting catcher for Peterborough, the starting catcher for Etobicoke. We had the obvious Nate Kapusa, who was there, who was the starting catcher for Burlington and had played some Team Ontario ball. So it just, and I think probably when everyone saw you, they're like, yeah, he'd make for a great backup in a brawl because you were about 6'5" and about 220 pounds, I think 225. And so I think physically, the coaches probably saw someone that they'd like to really work with, from that perspective. So, but, then now you're getting thrown into a mix. I can't say because I was a pitcher. On the pitching side, there were a lot of really experienced people who had a lot of mound time in Canada. People who had started for pretty established organizations and but also some great people to learn from. Chris Ebel was in those workout sessions. Rob Green, Teddy and I, Alex, Brad Tupper. So, out of the 10 pitchers that, pitched regularly, on the actual Brock team, 7 of them came from those indoor workout sessions. So that says a lot. And a lot of people with a couple of years experience at Brock too. So there was a maturity level and a capability of being a good measured leader that was there, I think, with that pitching staff. And you fit in wonderfully well. But it must have been daunting when the coaches came to you and said, you have one summer to really turn yourself into a baseball pitcher to try and make this team. Tell me a little bit about what that summer was like and what that conversation felt like. Did that, fire you up, or was it a little bit scary, or both?
Probably, yeah, a bit of both. I mean, I've always been excited, I guess, with challenges and pushing myself. But yeah, so I went back that year. Then was probably my second year in Caledonia, and I approached them and said, "I want more pitching time, or give me the chance to keep working." So, and they were great there too to let me do that. And it was great to put a lot of those drills and things kind of into practice and starting to build this. I could only at that time just threw as hard as I could, and so starting to learn to throw some junk and curveballs. And I think I remember, because I threw so hard, my curveball was breaking. It was almost like a slider, how quickly it was, cutting. And so it was great to start to put that into some practice. And I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed pitching, and like I said, I always had a good arm and enjoyed throwing hard. So I think that just naturally kind of clicked, and it was a great opportunity to do that. So going back there into the fall, I was excited to keep going. And at that time too, I started bullpen, so it was just inning here and there, or just little bits and pieces. But yeah, I think to me, it was the patience I think everyone had then to say, yeah, let's you keep working with them and see where you can end up. So,
Well, I think it's important to note too that a lot of people won't know this, but I think your positive attitude and ability to be a great spokesperson for what we were doing, we utilized you to do a little bit of recruiting, and I think you were one of the players that helped with an initial campus visit with the Oshawa guys, both Larry and Daryl Houston, Chris Peters, and a coach named Mike Gordensky, who came down to take a look at the program. And also, I think we went to a couple of, we may have driven to a couple of tournaments to do some scouting. So it was, unique to be involved, I think, probably as a player that was, a little bit more involved than just prepping to play. So, that must have been, kind of just felt a little bit, I think a little bit of wind behind your sails there, and understanding that the coaches and the other players really appreciated what you had brought in those early days when we were in the gym.
Yeah. And in hindsight, seeing where I am now, I think, those leadership opportunities, again, growing up, I was pretty introverted, a fairly quiet, shy kid. And I think that was just also that other stepping out of the box, but you just made it such a comfortable spot to do it. I think whether seeing something in me I didn't know, or just, being able to bring it out. But I remember those. I remember going to Isaac's, sitting down with the guys and showing them around the school and such. And, yeah, I mean, it was great to try to promote that and sell it. And, yeah, I appreciate it. I remember, even, going to your guys' house, playing balderdash and things too, trying to recruit. It's hard playing against Ted. He's a pretty tough competitor there too. So,
yeah, Ted is, I think if he wasn't busy changing the world in terms of getting people to support youth sports, he'd be a professional board game player, or just everything. He was amazing at Sega. He was amazing. I mean, we would play Sega hockey and he would just kick everybody's ass. It's unbelievable from that perspective. Yeah. So we get to, the summer, and hence then comes, talking about, us at our place there. we get to training camp that starts a couple of weeks before school. So, we had no visibility as to who, I think the coaches did, but I certainly did not, as to just how many new players and how many talented players were going to be there at training camp. And we show up and there are all kinds of great talented players there. There's a Rick Bottomley, there's Matt Fletcher, there are Andrew Tinish. The team looks quite a bit different than it did in the spring. What are your recollections of training camp? What do you remember most about it, and a little bit about what that experience was like from your perspective? Because you're fighting to make the team at this point, and now there's a Joel Garton and a Steve Vatour in the mix. Those are some pretty high end arms. Just a little bit about what you remember of training camp.
Yeah, I remember. And those guys were big guys too, and fairly intimidating with their abilities. I think I was one of the few that had a car too, so I think I had to carpool a few people to practice. So, but yeah, I remember. It was I think I don't know if we were doing twice a day, practices, or it was pretty intense, the schedule that we were working on. Doing all the, I think for some reason the drills stand out for me. So it must have been really, really impactful that they're still here with me, but, doing all the lunges. And, I remember you were talking about, if you showed up late and, having to do, doing the laps between the poles, if, running the whole thing. So I don't think I was ever late. I may have seen the first people get nailed with that, and the lesson was drilled in pretty quick to show up on time. But, it was also because we played. I think we did I don't know where we were doing a few there. Where the Jays, were we there yet in that St. Catherine once for practices, or was that later on?
We were practicing in Thorold, and I think one of the a couple things that stand out. I remember no one wanted to do the towel drill with you because you would just kill them with the towel, and so I would always try to find someone that was maybe a little less imposing. So, Brad Tupper or Alex Harold would always be high on my list for the towel drill. Yeah. But it was also our first opportunity to see really the fully fleshed out coaching staff working so intensely with players, and boy, that, I think the professionalism and organization level compared to the indoor practices were really well organized, but it is a different thing to see that and what we were doing on the field, where you had Daryl Kemp working with hitters, you had Briggs Jude and LePage working with outfield, infield, Mike and Jeff Lounsbury and Coach Topping, all really making, and something that Joel Garton brought up, productive use of everybody's time. Like we would practice, but we would be in constant motion and constantly be doing something that improved our abilities as players and as a team. And that, I thought about that, and it was absolutely true what Joel said. I've never seen a more productive practice in my life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and I think and that's it too, like being the pitchers. I think we probably got away with a little bit more too, because we'd stand at the sides doing our drills, which weren't as intense, but watching them have to work a little bit harder. But yeah, and I think that was, for me, never having anything at that level, right, of that intensive support and coaching. And yeah, the towel drill stands out a lot. I remember whether it was when we'd started the indoors, using the tennis ball cans to work on our curves and stressing, getting the rotation and things that way. So, yeah, a lot of those things. That's probably too, with you saying not wanting to go up against them with the towel drill. That might be where Ron and I first worked together, because, probably equally pounding each other's gloves hard. So,
yeah, it's funny, and I think it's probably one of the more special relationships that formed out of that first year team. You and like your clone, Ron Strow, who was from Hamilton. Two big guys. You guys are kind of, you know, put your head down. And Ron was a bit of a thinker. I think you're just a little more naturally, you're quiet, but very affable and very personable. And Ronnie was quiet at times, and but you guys naturally gravitated towards each other. And yeah, it may have started in training camp with finding people that you could warm up with, and you guys could equally kill each other with the towels. But talk a little bit about finding a kindred spirit in Ron Stroud.
I think, I mean, physically, you're right. We're very similar. Whether that just was what kind of clicked is, same styles and warm ups and stuff. Great guy. And I think, looking back on it, that might have been just simply what it was, right? We were, equally, strong in certain things, and no one else would kind of work with us. So, two quiet guys and just wanting to work hard. But, I do remember just, being a natural kind of fit and easy to talk with and things. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was so we get near the end of training camp, and we had to billet players. So we had 5 players in our place, and the coaches were so generous that they cut 4 of them, the other 4. And I remember you and Ted and I had a car too. So
Yeah.
I was driving lots of players, but it was a long car ride back to our place because the other 4 had been cut, and they may have drowned their sorrows in what was remaining of a couple of cases of beer that I would have had on site. And we were playing board games and balderdash and absorbing a lot of, look at in rightful emotion. They were upset about not making the team. But I remember one guy in particular who was an infielder that didn't make it. He was from the East Coast. And at a certain point, it just turned, and he said, I'm going to be super supportive of you guys. I'll come out to see the games. I knew we were on the right track when it went from blanket disappointment to that, because I think a lot of the players that didn't make the team, with a couple of exceptional positions, they could see just how talented it was and how difficult it would be to make a team that is deep and with committed, talented people at positions. So was it exciting? Was it exciting when you finally kind of had official confirmation that you'd made the team, Todd? It
was. And I remember, I think the moment for me was when we got our jerseys. I remember I vividly met, in the clubhouse, you passing them out. And I think whether it was an initial kind of sign up, what number would you want and things like that. I think to me, that was kind of the moment, right? You made it, you got to wear that Brock across the hats, the V and stuff like that. So, it was, I was quite proud. And, I said, my family too, like they were great. I kept, in touch with my parents, letting them know how things were going, and they came out to a few, games. So, it was nice to, to be able to go through that and share those moments with them. So,
yeah, they're pretty. I think that was Coach McRae that came up with a color scheme, which was, obviously reflective of the school. But we were early adopters of the color gray in the mix, which they later embraced more heavily at the university. So, I think there is a certain amount of pride that goes with a Brock Badgers baseball jersey, especially when you're the first team.
Yeah.
And so we're now playing. Like we have this rather ambitious schedule of both Canadian and American games. And tell us a little bit about your perspective as a pitcher and as a performer on the team. I think you, from what I can recall, you proved yourself and earned more and more mound time as it went along. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, and how the coaches worked to get the best out of you, and how much of that was just, Todd Nie, exceptional individual who went out and performed well. But, there's a fair amount of investment, I think, from Coach McRae, from Coach Topping, because they genuinely liked what you brought as a person. But you can be the greatest person in the world, if you don't get people out, you're not going to see the mound much.
Yeah. And so as I started out, like I said, in the bullpen, and just getting the odd inning here and there, and doing pitch counts for everybody else and things like that. But did work my way up to, and I don't know exactly where in the season it happened, maybe mid-season, to starting a few games. Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, Coach McRae, I think, was a great supporter. Like I said, being fairly green coming in, there was a lot of learning for me to do. One that really stands out, I had this bad habit of, I'd throw my pitch, and then as I caught the ball, I'd take about 3 or 4 steps forward, walk around the back of the mound, step back up. And I think I did that for a couple innings. And then, Coach McRae called me over and said, just cut that out. Just get the ball, go back, pitch, just do your thing. So, just little things like that, learning as I went. And I just, I just absorbed it and wanted to do it all. And, the pitching, I don't know how well I was. I mean, I tried to do my best with it and such, but obviously, was improving as I went. And, just really enjoyed it. I remember the traveling down to the States. That was, quite an experience, playing a lot of teams down there. The one that really stands out was when we went to the Hall of Fame, the trip down there, and we got to play, one of the local teams.
Yeah, it was Malloy College in Cooperstown, and I think for all of us, it was, who hadn't been to the Baseball Hall of Fame, it puts you in a really interesting mindset when you see Ty Cobb's cleats, or you see that huge bat that Babe Ruth used to use in the barnstorming days. And it's just kind of like a mecca for baseball players, and you come out of it very proud to put on your spikes.
Yeah.
And, I remember the field was really like picturesque and beautiful. And I think you probably alluded to the fact it kind of made you feel like all the old school people were going to come rolling out in their cigars and in their, old fashioned cars, and
the old big band music. Yeah, yeah. It did. It was like a Norman Rockwell kind of, painting and such. And I got to pitch in that game. That really stands out. I remember, pitching a bit in there, and it was, kind of a highlight moment for me of having that opportunity to do that. But whether it was just the whole, getting the history and going to, I mean, even Cooperstown's a little postcard of an area too, right? So, that was a memorable experience for me there.
Yeah, it's funny. We could do our own little commercial on Upper New York State.
Yeah.
Okay, people tend to kind of blend this in with Buffalo, and I played summer ball in Buffalo, and it could be eye-opening or eye-closing depending on what part of Buffalo you were in. So clearly, I won't be hired as a diplomat representing the greater interests of Buffalo, but I will say that Upper New York State, where I also, between Brock and other teams I've played on, I got to see a lot of it, and it's beautiful. I would highly recommend it. Cooperstown is gorgeous, Syracuse, and some great skiing. There's some lovely, when we went to Bethlehem to play St. Bonaventure, you're right at the foot of the mountains there. It's beautiful. And, I think people in Ontario or in Canada, it's an underrated place unless they've been to Lake Placid or one of these places where they've had some exposure. So I really treasure all of our road trips, frankly. And we got to travel a fair amount also in Canada, road trips to Guelph. And I believe we played in Kingston that first year. And we won the Durham College tournament, which for the Oshawa guys was really special because we got to beat Sam Dempster and Ken Babcock, the pioneers of Canadian college and university baseball, and a lot of our ex-teammates were playing there at that time. And so the team was really quite successful. I mean, it was a little more challenging with the Division One schools, but we were competitive at times. And I think maybe we ended up winning one game against the D1 school that first year, but
Right.
there were some weird circumstances that we've detailed in other podcasts with dubious umpiring and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So this brings us really to a really, interesting left-hand turn, particularly in your story, Todd. And I think more than me explaining it, maybe it's better to get it in first person. And we're a couple of weeks away from nationals and practice. I think it was practicing in Thorold, or it may have been warming up just before a game. I don't recall, but he had been suffering from sinus infection, which I think a lot of us would have had back in the day. And it's not as acutely or accurately diagnosed as it is now. You just kind of usually had to grin and bear it and sniffle your way through, and it was like a bad cold with a little bit of pain around the jawline and eye sockets. But why don't you talk? It's, I think, great for everybody to hear this in first person, knowing how formative it is for your year in particular, and maybe the next couple. But why don't we go there?
Yeah. So, like I said, we were in Thorold. I think it was warming up before. I don't know if it was a game or a practice, but like every other one, Ron and I were pitching back and forth, warming up. And like I said, I'd had a sinus infection for a bit, nothing, too major. And just a pitch that, just any other, try to catch it, just glanced off the tip of my glove and caught me in the upper cheek. Checked for blood, nothing was bleeding, everything seemed fine. Pitched in warm up or pitched in the game, kept things going. So everything seemed okay at that point. Went home that night and about 2 a.m, started to feel pain. It started as in, I thought it was a toothache. So I even remember, 2 a.m, driving out to the 7-Eleven, buying some Ambisol, trying to, numb the pain and get through it that way. And that didn't help. The morning, woke up and it was shifted up to into my eye. So behind my eye was a lot of pain. So I went to a walk-in clinic, saw a doctor, and he did a fairly quick check and said it was eye infection. Gave me some eye drops to take home. Did that. Next night was rough. Couldn't sleep very well. Woke up, my eye was fully swollen shut. So I went back to the same clinic and same doctor, and I think his first words to me were like, holy bleep. And I said, that's not a good sign when your doctor's saying that to you. So
No.
He quickly sent me down to Niagara Falls. My roommates drove me down. And it's actually, just as a side, through all this, kind of reminiscing, talking to you, I got talking with my parents again to say, like, what was the experience like for you? And my mom actually had gone through some boxes in the basement and found her old journal from that, and actually her entries of what was going on. She just sent them to me the other night. So we talked about it, but never really that much in depth. So it was kind of interesting to see, what they were experiencing as well and where they were in the process. So when I got down to Niagara Falls, that they had reached out to my parents, that my parents came and joined us. And at that point, they weren't sure exactly what was going on. My mom recalls even like they, talking about flesh-eating disease, like lots of things were being thrown out, pretty scary stuff. So they started, intensive rounds of antibiotics, but wasn't reacting. So they flew me from Niagara to London University Hospital. So I was in there for 10 days. And it took a couple of days, but the antibiotics started to help. But what had happened was the impact of the ball hitting the cheek. It fractured the back of my sinus cavity, and which probably had been weakened, with some of the infection that going on. And the infection got in then behind my eye, and with the swelling, it ended up pinching off the my optic nerve. So it stopped the blood flow going through to to my eye, which ended up the cells there dying. And eventually they were able to get the pressure down. They did actually, when I got in there, did some incisions and some surgery to relieve the pressure initially. And long story short, unfortunately, the vision in my right eye didn't come back. The stop of the blood flow had killed off anything that way, but it still functioned. It still moved and everything as as normal. So then got 10 days in the hospital, got out of there, and like you said, it was pretty close to the end of the season or heading on to Montreal. And I stubbornly, maybe at that, at that young age, I said to my parents, I wanted to see it through. I wanted to, get back with you guys and get to the end. And that was scary for my parents, because the doctors were saying, with the, there was nothing, no other antibiotics after that. Like if I got anything further, so I think my mom recalls Coach McRae calling her up, and, we were talking about maybe my dad and I going out, or, driving separate, and Coach McRae, reassured them that, he'd look after me, make sure wasn't doing anything foolish, and would stay healthy. And that was enough to convince them that I was in good hands, and they let me go and travel with you guys to Montreal. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course, you got put in my room, so that's an immediate strike one right there. But Todd, listen, there is one other experience I recall in there, and we'll talk about it here shortly. But, this is one where I remember the conversation with Coach McRae. And he said to me, I've talked to Todd's parents a couple of times, obviously, because, we wanted to get an update, and it was pretty dicey for you. Like, that was a scary situation, and one that could have went in a really horrible direction. And not that, having your optic nerve, but there were worse scenarios that were at play there, and it was scary, I think, for everybody, particularly for your parents, I suspect, because being taken to London is a sign that something's pretty serious. But I remember Coach McRae coming to me and saying, I phoned talked to Todd's parents. And he said, they're exceptional people. They are super supportive of Todd's playing on the team, and really see this as just an accident, something that was happenstance, and nobody could really had a party in. Super positive, and that will always stick with me, because Coach McRae has a bazillion great qualities, but he also tends to be pretty understated at times. He likes to keep things pretty close to the vest, but I could sense in our conversation that that meant a lot to him, that your parents were so, they were there to stand up and be counted. Mm-hmm. And that brings us to you speaking to the team after practice in Thorold. I remember that we were in those change rooms in Thorold, and you came in to speak to the team. And it's maybe a week before Nationals, but we, at that point, I think you knew you were coming with. But I remember, you still had the incision marks around your eye from where they had done some relief of the swelling, and you spoke so eloquently and so beautifully to the team. I don't think there's anyone that wouldn't have went through a burning building at that point for you, and we all still feel that way. Obviously, we're gonna trot our 50-year-old selves out there to play a game. But what do you remember about addressing the team? Because I remember it very specifically because I was sitting right near you when you were doing it. And I can remember looking over and just thinking, what a strong, great teammate. And because I don't know in retrospect whether if I was going through the same thing, whether I would have been able to even step back on a field. So, tell me a little bit about what it was like speaking to the team for the first time.
Yeah, I like I said, I think I really wanted to just to see it through, to be back with with you guys. Um, I didn't have any ill will or anything like that. I believe things happen for a reason, and yeah, I was fortunate that things did work out. But I wanted to, I think, just let everyone know that I'm okay. There's nothing, nothing that I felt bad about it, especially Ron, and just one of those freak things that happened, and just it unfortunately happened to me, but I think it was important for me to reassure and let everyone know that, and especially, I mean, and the timing too, moving into the finals. It was, I mean, we were a great team. We were very strong, and I had full expectations. We were going all the way, right? So I wanted to be there with everyone to enjoy that part. So, I'm appreciative that, I mean, because Coach McCray could just have easily said no. Like it's a risk. We're not willing to do it. But I'm glad that he was supportive of that, and maybe part of it was sticking me in your room to to babysit and make sure I was doing well. The one thing I do remember, it was for me, it was also just knowing what I want, what the new normal was going to be like, and what I could do. I knew it wasn't going to be pitching right away, but I do remember, and I don't know if Ted recalls. I think when we were at the hotel room, I asked him just to head out the parking lot just to play catch, and just want to know, could I still catch? Could I still throw? Seeing things that way, and just the small little, quick little game of catch with him. That stood out to me, and that reassured me that, yeah, you know what, like it's like, that part's still going to be okay, and go through. But yeah, I think it was just at that moment for me, just saying to everyone else, I'm okay. Like let's keep going now and move forward. So
Yeah, Teddy always amazes me. I've played on, I think, if I count high school and a couple of teams we played on in Oshawa and at Brock, he's played on a lot. I've seen his the way that he does things, and he is always respected for what a great teammate he does, for subtle things he does that
yeah,
people don't really notice until they're done playing. He just was always kept everyone loose. He's always had that lightning quick sense of humor, and you really had to watch it around him because
comic
I have
relief.
this. Yeah, like I had a great habit of putting my foot in my mouth, and then Ted would just shove the foot all the way in. It was kind of funny, but I think leaders in life show their qualities early, and that's Ted's superpower. He's just a guy that keeps people loose, and that's a real skill in life. And your resilience and positive attitude and just determination, Todd, I think is evident to anyone who's ever met you. So we we won't dwell on the nationals. It was a great experience. We got to the final. All of us had our moments in the sun in some form or fashion over the course of that year. What's life like for you coming out of this pioneering year where we launch a team and we go through all of that goes with it? It's your third year, and so what's next for Todd? Is I think the interesting thing that everyone would love to know.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just doing my 3-year history, and as I said, I didn't have the grades to continue teachers college there. I did end up going to Buffalo Duville College for my teacher's college, but I got to stay in St. Catharines. I just commuted back and forth and lived with my roommates. That's the other part I kind of reminisce with school. It's your first time for most being away from home. Your roommates become kind of your new family and connection. So I was lucky to stay with the same group for 4 years. Um, and then your teammates become the next group that way. So Duville College met my future wife there, and we both became teachers. Came up to Aurelia, and been here for 25 years. I got two beautiful children: son Hayden and daughter Peyton. And that's kind of the neat part too. Is my daughter, both my kids got into competitive swimming, which is a total different, you know, different beast than baseball, but still a team atmosphere, but a lot more, the individual times and pushing yourself that way. But right now, my daughter is at going to Brock. She's in her second year of concurrent ed. Definitely, better marks than I did, so she must have got that from my wife. And yeah, she's swimming varsity. She just in her second year swimming varsity with Brock. So I've been able to now go back down and enjoy it as a parent on the other side of everything, um, and just the pride of her being a Badger and seeing the school and again walking through and turning a corner and seeing those dreaded stairs. It comes back, but yeah, it's a great experience. I've always enjoyed coaching and working with kids, so being an educator and a principal, just a natural fit that way. I've coached my own kids. I've um, been the club president of our competitive swim team for 5 years. So just any looking ways that I can help and do things. And that's going back. I mean, that just was ingrained in me. Family was always a big thing growing up and working hard. So it's led me to where I am now.
Interesting. Has there been, what was it like adjusting to life with 50% vision a little bit? Was that a process, or is it something that you adapted to quickly and kind of,
It,
you
it
know, you
took
don't,
it took some time. So first going back, especially to school, um, walking in halls, I'd take a turn and I would be taking out a whole bunch of people, just not. So I think being 6'5", I got away with a lot more than I should have doing that. But you quickly you quickly pick up little tricks here and there. So I'd start to now look down. If I see feet, I know someone's there and I gotta, kind of pause. But honestly, it hasn't, I play golf. I play, I played slow pitch and stuff afterwards and things. So I've still been able to do that. So not a lot of difference. It does. So with it though, the eye muscles are what help keep your pupils focused. And so with it not having vision, it's had a bit of a drift at times where the alignment goes out. But I had a surgery a few years ago to help bring that back, and just more of a cosmetic type of thing. But yeah, I mean as for life, it hasn't really slowed me down. It's hasn't been too much of a difference. So yeah, and I've always I think had a good positive attitude. I don't try to let too much phase me. And I've had another you know uh, rough experience in my life. I was in a car accident about 9 years ago. My son and I were actually back home visiting my family, and driving home, we got T-boned. A guy blew through stop sign and flipped us over a couple of times, and I ended up, having 4 cracked ribs and lost my spleen. My son had a concussion, but he was fortunate as well. But that knocked me off for a bit. About a half a year or so off work and recovery. But my wife, did a great job looking after me, and my in-laws up here were great helping out too. So I don't know. I think the attitude is also a good way of helping to get through those. But I don't have many more organs that I can donate. So hopefully this is as far as I go. So
Well, Todd, I think one of the neatest things that you can talk about is, the genesis of you winning your most dedicated player award. That is an interesting story that 99% of the team's not going to know. And I
right.
think says a ton about the people involved with the Brock program and yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your most dedicated player award?
Yeah. So as I said, I went right out to, from that year into teachers college. So when the banquet came up, I didn't even think I had any chance of anything. And I actually had my first date with my, my not soon to be wife on that day. So I didn't go, and found out later that, yeah, I was honored to receive the most dedicated award. So I didn't think much of it, just kind of kept moving on. And then when we're getting closer to the date for getting married, my father-in-law, he knew about it. He knew the story, and he reached out to the school and got in touch with Coach Lounsbury, and he said, I'd love to see if we could still get it. And Coach Lounsbury, I don't know if he had the award or made up the award again or whatever, but he got it to my father-in-law, and then he presented it to me at our wedding, the most dedicated award there. So we joke now that I put the dedication towards my wife in a different direction, but no, it was very nice. And Coach Lounsbury, again, the history that he's got with the club, and just even for him to to reach out and continue to do that meant a lot to me as well. So
Yeah, that's an incredible gesture on Coach Lounsbury's part. And Jeff is a guy that will go through a brick wall for people, and I love that about him. And I think that story makes me smile immensely. Most of us that have been through a wedding day, we dread someone going up and having a speech that doesn't hit home or anything like that. So it must have been a pretty special thing to bring that into your life. So, you have a couple of kids that you're pretty, obviously invested in, and they're doing great things. Sounds like they're chips off the old block, obviously. Is it going to be exciting for you to get into uniform and show them what you used to do once upon a time?
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They're gonna have to let out the uniforms from a little bit more there than there was back then, but I am. I mean, like I said, with my daughter there now, I'm quite excited to to be there with the homecoming and getting them out. My parents, family, everyone's excited to come, and I'm again very appreciative of all the work and things that are going into putting this all together. But yeah, I think stepping out on a mound, I'm gonna have to start doing some stairs and getting back in shape. It's a good motivator for that. So we'll start working now and see what it looks like. But yeah, and it was funny because part of the thing, and I'm seeing your other podcast, your jersey there in the back. I mean, that was the thing too. I don't have many, I got the memories and stuff. I got some of the Durham Lords Award and things like that, but not a lot of other memento. So it's nice even just to have some, some pictures and photos of being back there with everybody. So
I'm going to show everyone something that's pretty infamous if I get it on camera here.
yeah.
Remember these?
Yes, I have. I've got one of those. I've got the warm up jersey. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's we had to sell those. It was part of because the program was so ambitious, we ended up having to do a lot more fundraising initiatives than I think than we initially anticipated. But we had a car raffle because Jess Dixon's dad, I think, owned a dealership, and Mike McRae came up with selling those very stylish and very great for the ladies. I remember the boys wearing those T-shirts to front 54 in the world.
Yeah, we had a couple pub nights that we hosted, and
no, it was it was a unique time to be on campus as part of the baseball team for sure. There was a bit of a rock star factor there because there was no football team at Brock, and just fun times. And thank goodness though that some of it didn't appear on. We didn't have phones back in the day
Yeah.
because the YouTube channel would need an adult accompaniment or an R rating for it for some of it, but fun and I think produced a ton of leadership. And
Mhm.
so we learn in all these important life lessons. And 30 years after the fact, Todd, what what did that whole experience, what does it mean to you? Like, do you feel it's influenced who you are today? Are there things that you learned in that scenario?
Yeah.
Some twists of fate that worked out really well. You met your wife because you ended up in Buffalo. So tell me a little bit about what it means to you now, 30 years after the fact.
I I think for me, like I said, growing up being that kind of quiet, introverted, kid, to me, for my personal, it was for me stepping out of the box to take that leap to sign up. I vividly remember, talking to myself saying, you can do this. And I'm glad I did. I really am glad that I made that attempt and signed up. But I think part of it was, it, you guys were just, it was such a great team and great people to do it with, right? I mean, if it was a different crew and people were more cutthroat and competitive and whatnot, I don't know if I would have lasted or gone through, but it just, everything aligned in such a great way. And then, the opportunities to step up and do some more, behind the scenes things and leadership. I think that, like I said, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I think it was just, that also gave me that confidence to say, yeah, I can keep going. I can do more things and got into the principal, the leadership role there. And, and like, the swimming teams and clubs and stuff like that. I just, yeah, I'm glad I pushed myself to do it, but I'm really thankful for, the coaches and the teams that were there to help guide me. And, I joke, yeah, I was pretty green going in, but, nobody, everybody was good about it. Could have really, hazed me for a lot more, but it was just the right team at the right time. So,
Yeah, I think, Coach McRae is an educator, right? He was a teacher and still does it as a professional coach. And I think he'd be excessively proud of your career after Brock. And I think that's where he would take the most pride. I don't want to speak on his behalf. We can let him speak for himself. But
mhm.
I think everybody, would take immense pride in the man that you've grown into. You were always a big man, like at the end of the day, I was kind of like, I had this habit of, and I'll put air quotes around habit. I had this habit of hitting people with the ball. And a couple of times when I was in junior, that triggered some extracurricular activities. So look at having a 6'5",
Yeah.
220-pound backup kind of probably envisioned me to be a little more courageous about throwing the ball inside against the odd, kid that was in the box. But,
We
that was
like it.
some, yeah, I freely admit that I have a Jekyll and Hyde personality, and it was done on purpose, actually. It was coached into me. So off, when I wasn't pitching and it was an off day for me, which was fairly easy to govern as a guy that started, um, I, I always thought I was a pretty good teammate the 4 days when I wasn't pitching. I could be positive and cheer people on and, you know, have good conversations and work hard. But, it was kind of like the day of death when I would then pitch because I would take everything that would be frustrating or painful. In my case, a lot of angst from my brother dying. Um, and you project that into a persona. And that persona was, um, I was taught by Ted Stone to whip that into a frenzy
Mm-hmm.
and pitch 100% on emotion, so that the person in that batter's box was there to, defeat you at a core level in life, in that moment, in that batter's box. So I was a completely different animal in that I would see people, the opponent, as someone that was personally affronting me. So I would do everything in my power to intimidate them and beat them at a carnal level, like we were fist fighting to the death.
Right.
And that's what baseball was to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cathartic. And, I think I'm able to be a better, more measured person because it was my form of therapy,
Right.
And, I, pitching for you, I think, what were you feeling when you were out on that mound? It was probably a very new experience.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few more years experience than you did. And I was still relatively very inexperienced compared to someone like Rob or Joel, who are pitching since they're 8 or 9 years old. What was going through your head when you were pitching?
I mean, getting the out, that's, I think it was just, for me, it was just trying to, to work on these new skills and these new things to be in there. I wasn't, I wasn't too big on the stats or the count, things that way. It was just that moment, that batter. I do recall one time, I can't remember when the game was, but this guy had gone, spikes up on our second baseman and got inside, and Coach McRae said, next time he's up, I want you to hit him. Don't hit him in the head, but hit him right. And that was new to me. It's not my nature. I'm probably the opposite of kind of where you're coming from, but I did try. I think my first pitch was quite inside, but I didn't hit him. And then I thought, okay, I can't do it again. I'm going to have to just now pitch to him. And it built up a count, and then accidentally I did finally nail him. I lost. I don't know if the effect was there at the very end, but I mean, I was just just trying to survive, I think, and get things there. But it was, the learning for me was great, and learning from you guys that had more experience and more time with it. It was just a great experience with it. So
Yeah, it is a unique thing when it is a unique to baseball. There's a little bit of etiquette about it, and
yeah.
sometimes you end up hitting people, but pretty, I can say this now, but Ted Stone addressed our Oshawa team and said, if Mike, it was two of us, Mike and myself and a gentleman named David Hatch, who was another lefty that threw pretty hard, and Ted Stone said to the catchers, if Pullman or Hatch hit the batter with the ball, instead of grabbing the guy if he goes to charge the mound, throw the ball back so they can hit them again before they get to the mound.
There you go.
So we weren't. I was not shy about throwing in there because I felt that helped.
Mm-hmm.
Helped with the intimidation factor. But it's really funny to think of Coach McRae asking you to hit someone and that being your first real, okay, now we're into it. And the end result is you tried and you missed, and then you weren't trying and you whacked them. So that's hilarious, Todd.
Yeah.
What is, and we'll end on this note because I think, it's been fascinating hearing everything you've been up to. Do you have some goals that are still on that, life's to-do list that you want to get achieved in the next couple of years? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think mainly right now the goals are through the kids. I want them, like any father, parent, want them to do well. So my daughter, is like in her second year with concurrent ed, it'll be 6 in total. So paying for that's going to be, a challenge, but yeah, I mean, she's, my wife and my father-in-law was a retired principal. My mother-in-law was school secretary. So it's, it's in her blood, and it's exciting to see her, carry that torch and go forward. She's, I see a lot of, my qualities and my wife's qualities in her, in, that leadership, but also, the working with kids and things that she's done. So it's exciting to kind of see where she's going to head. My son's in grade 11. He's heading into grade 12. He's looking at probably the trades heading out. He's great with his hands, likes building, woodworking, and such. So it's kind of supporting him in that pathway, and it's different than what we've experienced, but it's exciting to see his excitement going forward. So I think that's family's always been important to me. My parents are still back home, my brother and sister, everyone, so I'm very very fortunate to have that. And I think I'm looking forward to when and if retirement comes, being able to spend quality time with them, travel, do those things. But it's I've got no complaints. It's I always, like I said, I always think things happen for a reason. I've been lucky to get through a couple pretty big things in my life, and just hoping to be able to keep going forward that way. So yeah,
It's amazing, Todd. Well, listen, we will obviously get caught up as we work towards the reunion weekend, and I think everyone is going to be very happy with what they hear in this podcast, because it's that special positivity and attitude is still easy to pick out 30 years later, and that's amazing, Todd. So we look forward to it, and I look forward to stepping back on that field with you in it'll be about 8 months' time. So amazing. Thank you for today, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Looking forward to seeing you guys again, and I'll start training. So hopefully it's worthwhile.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Well, the smell of grass.